James Holloway had been working towards this moment for years. After humanity's first contact with the Volktar, an advanced alien species, Earth was finally preparing to establish full diplomatic relations. The Volktar were a species of towering regal beings, known for their incredible technology and peaceful, yet proud culture. They had watched Earth's progress from afar, and now it was time for humans to join their galactic family. As one of the United Earth Confederation's top diplomats, James was tasked with being the face of humanity in this crucial first meeting. The Volktar's massive flagship, a vessel as grand and imposing as the Queen herself, hovered above Earth's capital city. It had been a long process to arrange this first face-to-face meeting, and the anticipation was palpable. Media from all over the world had gathered to broadcast the event live. This wasn't just any meeting, it was humanity's chance to prove its worth in the eyes of an advanced civilization. James had been preparing for this day for months. He had studied Volktar history, learned about their culture, and even practiced his diplomatic speech. But there was one thing that made this meeting even more unique: the Translator device. The device was a new, technological marvel, designed to break down language barriers between humans and alien species. It was meant to be flawless, able to translate in real time with no mistakes. Or at least that's what the scientists claimed. James, being a naturally cautious person, had some doubts. He couldn't help but wonder if this technology, no matter how advanced, could truly handle the complexities of alien languages. But he didn't have time to worry about it now. His spaceship, a small shuttle, approached the Volktar flagship. Whoa. And he could feel the weight of history on his shoulders. The shuttle's engines hummed softly, and through the small window, he could see the glittering surface of the Volktar ship. Its smooth, metallic surface seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly light. The closer they got, the more James could feel the significance of this meeting. The shuttle docked with a quiet thud, and James stepped out onto the massive Volktar vessel. The inside was unlike anything he had ever seen. Grand corridors stretched high above him, filled with intricate designs that seemed to pulse with energy. Alien statues lined the walls, and strange, soft lighting illuminated the path ahead. He was escorted through the ship by a group of Volktar attendants, their towering forms silent but graceful as they led him toward the throne room where Queen Janara awaited. As James walked, he couldn't help but feel a little nervous. He had met diplomats from other nations before, even leaders from different planets, but nothing compared to this. The Queen of the Volktar was said to be as wise as she was powerful. She was respected across the galaxy for her intelligence and her calm demeanor, and today, James would be the one to greet her on behalf of Earth. The door to the throne room opened slowly, revealing a scene James had only seen in documentaries. Queen Janara sat upon a magnificent throne, draped in robes that shimmered with silver threads. Her face was angular and serene, her eyes reflecting the light of the room with a calm intensity. She looked every bit the monarch she was commanding and regal. Her attendants flanked her, standing perfectly still like statues. James swallowed hard. He had to remind himself to breathe. He was about to meet the leader of an entire species, the person who would decide whether humanity would be accepted into the galactic community. The stakes were high. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, bowing slightly in the traditional human way of greeting. The gesture was meant to show respect, a universal sign of diplomacy. He smiled, ready to speak, but his hand hovered near the translation device attached to his belt, the Translator. A small, sleek device that looked like a tiny metal cube was supposed to translate any alien language into perfect English. All he had to do was speak normally, and the device would ensure his words were understood. He wasn't worried about his speech. He had practiced it countless times, but he was still a little uncertain about how this whole thing would go. Would it really work? Would the Queen find it insulting if he didn't speak her language directly? "Your Majesty," James began, his voice steady, but with a hint of nervousness. "It is an honor to meet you today. I am James Holloway, and I come as the representative of Earth, hoping to establish peace and cooperation between our peoples." The translator beeped softly, ready to do its job. The words should have been immediately translated into the correct alien tongue, but instead, something odd happened. Instead of the smooth, respectful greeting James had intended, the translation device suddenly emitted a strange, garbled noise. It sputtered, clicking in worry like it was having a small malfunction. James froze, his eyes widening. Was this part of the translation? Before he could process what was happening, the device spoke out loud in a strange, awkward tone. Your Majesty, it is with great joy that is coited. Your bug-like exoskeleton is most impressive, and I am eager to cooperate with you. The words hung in the air like a lead balloon. James's face went white. He could feel the heat rise in his cheeks, his heart pounding in his chest. Couldn't believe it. The translator had not only misinterpreted his greeting, but had also somehow turned it into something completely absurd. Bug-like exoskeleton? Crush? He glanced up at Queen Janara, hoping that this was some mistake, some small glitch, in the system that could be easily corrected. But what he saw made him wish he could melt into the floor. The Queen's expression didn't change at first. She was silent, her eyes narrowing slightly as if trying to comprehend what she had just heard. Her regal face remained composed, but there was a flicker of confusion in her eyes. Her attendants, too, looked at one another, unsure how to react. To this strange, unintentional insult, James opened his mouth, trying to salvage the situation. No, that's not what I meant, he stammered. But the words came out all wrong. I meant to say that I look forward to working with you. I come in peace. But the translator didn't stop. Instead of translating James's urgent correction, it repeated the previous phrase. The Earthling wishes to squash the Great Queen. You're magnificent, I am sorry. James could feel the sweat on his forehead as he quickly tried to disengage the translator, tapping the device desperately. But it kept repeating those absurd phrases, making everything worse by the second. Queen Janara remained silent, her face unreadable. The room was thick with tension. James could hardly breathe as the device continued to sputter nonsense. He desperately wished the ground would swallow him whole. The silence in the throne room was unbearable. James was practically sweating buckets. He could feel his heart racing, his palms sweaty, and his face burning with embarrassment. He had just insulted the queen of the Volktar, the leader of an entire species, by calling her a bug and suggesting he wanted to squash her. He had hoped the situation might pass over quickly, that somehow everything would just go back to normal. But as the translator device continued to beep and sputter in the background, things were only getting worse. The Volktar attendants stood still, their eyes fixed on James, their faces unreadable. Queen Janara, who had been sitting so regal and composed just moments before, was now staring at him with an expression that was somewhere between confusion and mild curiosity. She didn't speak, but her sharp, intelligent eyes seemed to analyze every movement, every word James made. James tried to steady his breathing, attempting to make sense of what had just happened. His mind was racing, and he couldn't help but think, this can't be happening. This is the most important meeting of my career. And I've just ruined it in less than 2 minutes. His fingers trembled as he fiddled with the translation device. The screen flickered, and the words error, unknown translation, flashed across it. He pressed the buttons harder, hoping it would somehow fix itself. Why did this have to happen today of all days? Finally, he heard the voice of one of the Volktar attendants, a deep and slightly mechanical tone breaking the silence. Are you intending to call our queen a bug? James's eyes widened. He could feel his face turning even redder. His voice cracked when he tried to speak. No, that's not what I meant at all. There's been a malfunction with the translator. Dim. He trailed off, unable to find the right words to explain the mess he had made. The attendants eyes flicked to Queen Janara, as if waiting for her response. James could feel the pressure mounting. Every second seemed like an eternity. He was about to apologize again when Queen Janara's soft but powerful voice echoed through the throne room. Earthling, she said, her voice calm yet firm. Explain yourself. Do you call me a bug? James's throat went dry. He had prepared for many things in this meeting, but he had never imagined this. Your Majesty? No. Absolutely not, he said quickly, bowing lower, not knowing what else to do. The translator must have malfunctioned. It's meant to help us communicate, but it seems to have, messed up my words. I meant to say that I come in peace, that it's an honor to meet you, and I look forward to working together. There was a brief moment of silence, and then, to his surprise, Queen Janara smiled a small, knowing smile that showed a glimpse of humor. I see, she said slowly. So you do not wish to squash me, but work with me? She tilted her head as if trying to understand whether he was being serious. James, still on edge, nodded quickly. Yes, exactly, I come in peace, as I meant. To show respect, Your Majesty, please, let me try again. Before he could speak, the translator suddenly beeped again. James froze, his heart stopping. He knew something disastrous was about to happen. The translator's voice, now oddly cheerful, declared, The Earthling calls the Great Queen a very fine insect indeed. A superb bug. The device repeated the word bug a few more times. Its mechanical tone now utterly ridiculous. James felt his hands go cold. He looked at Queen Janara, unsure whether she was going to vaporize him with some kind of alien weapon or laugh him out of the room. But to his shock, Queen Janara did neither. She leaned back in her throne, her regal composure returning. It seems your device is in. It's an amusing mood, she said, her voice carrying a hint of something like amusement. James blinked. Was she ... laughing? No, she couldn't be. She's the queen of an entire alien species. She's just trying to maintain some kind of dignity. He didn't know whether to be relieved or more embarrassed. He quickly fumbled with the translator again, hoping to get it under control, but it only made things worse. The voice from the device spoke again, this time with even more enthusiasm. A noble bug queen, beautiful and mighty. Humans are very impressed. James felt his stomach lurch. No, that's not what I meant. He had to stop himself from shouting. The more he tried to correct it, the worse the device seemed to get. It was like a living thing that enjoyed making everything worse. The room had gone quiet once more. For a moment, James feared he had crossed the point of no return. But then, in a move that James never expected, Queen Janara broke into soft laughter. At first, it was just a chuckle. Then it grew louder, until the entire throne room echoed with the sound of the queen laughing. Her attendants, who had stood so stiff and serious, blinked in confusion. James could hardly believe his ears. You Earthlings are unpredictable, Queen Janara said, still smiling. Your translator may have insulted me, but I find this moment ... amusing. You seem to bring a certain charm to your clumsy attempts at diplomacy. James blinked again. Was she really laughing? Was this ... okay? This was not the reaction he had prepared for. He had expected anger, or perhaps confusion. He definitely hadn't expected the queen of the Volkdar to laugh at his mistake. I'm sorry, Your Majesty. This device is supposed to help us, but it's clearly failing me right now, James said, finally feeling a little more at ease. I swear I do not wish to insult you. I mean, you are. You are magnificent, Your Majesty, and I truly do respect you. The queen raised an eyebrow. Your words are very colorful, Earthling, but I believe you are sincere. Perhaps we can overlook your enthusiastic greeting. After all, you did call me a superb bug. That is certainly a new compliment. James could feel his shoulders sag with relief, though he was still incredibly embarrassed. At least the queen wasn't about to throw him out, or worse, in prison. Him for the accidental insult? You may be clumsy with words, Queen Janara continued, but I do sense a great deal of earnestness in your intentions. I will allow this misunderstanding to pass. However, I do expect you to be more careful with your future words. We do not take kindly to insults in the Volktar Empire. James nodded vigorously, his face still flushed. I promise, Your Majesty, I will be more careful. Thank you for your understanding. Queen Janara's smile softened as she looked at him with a certain wisdom in her eyes. I believe this will be the beginning of an interesting relationship, Earthling. But next time, please be careful with your translator. I am sure I will enjoy meeting you again, but perhaps without the bugs." The room, still tense with awkwardness, now seemed to shift in a more positive direction. The tension that had once filled the air began to dissipate as James realized he hadn't just ruined everything. In fact, he might have just made a memorable first impression. As Queen Janara motioned for the attendants to bring refreshments, James couldn't help but let out a small laugh of his own. This wasn't how he had imagined the meeting going, but in the end, he had survived. He had been given a second chance, and maybe, just maybe, this bug of a mistake would become the beginning of something far more significant. James sat down on one of the ornate seats placed around the grand throne room, still feeling the heat of embarrassment radiating from his cheeks. His mind replayed the moment over and over again when the translator had first called Queen Janara a bug, in the moment when it had referred to her as a superb insect. He could hardly believe what had just happened. But to his surprise, Queen Janara wasn't angry. Instead, she had laughed. James had been prepared for anything: anger, confusion, perhaps even a diplomatic crisis. What he wasn't ready for was to see the Queen, a monarch who ruled over one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, laughing at him. He'd seen plenty of serious monarchs, leaders who expected nothing less than perfection in every interaction. But Queen Janara had taken his mistake with grace, something that made James feel both relieved and a little more at ease, as the attendants brought forward drinks and delicacies. James kept stealing glances at the Queen. She had a striking presence, her towering frame still sitting with the kind of quiet authority that only a leader could maintain. Her silver robes shimmered as she shifted slightly in her seat, and her eyes, dark, mysterious, and filled with wisdom, never left James. Finally, after what seemed like a long silence, Queen Janara spoke again. Her voice was soft, but every word felt like it carried weight. "You are very fortunate, Earthling, that your translator failed so spectacularly," she said with a smile that still had a trace of humor in it. "Most species would not tolerate such a ... blunder. But I find your awkwardness ... endearing." James's mouth went dry, and he quickly looked down at his hands, trying to hide his nervousness. I really didn't mean to offend you, Your Majesty," he stammered. "The translator was supposed to help. I promise I come in peace, and I truly want to work with you and your people." Queen Janara studied him for a moment, her eyes narrowing slightly, though her smile remained. "I know you did not intend to offend, but it is rare for beings from another world to express themselves so ... openly. Most humans would hide behind formalities and proper gestures, trying to present a perfect image. But you, Earthling, seem different." James took a deep breath. The conversation was slowly starting to feel less like a disaster and more like something ... maybe even good. "I'm not good at pretending, Your Majesty. I think it's important to be honest, even if it's embarrassing sometimes." The Queen's smile softened, and for a brief moment, she looked at him not as a foreign diplomat, but as someone she might be able to understand. Perhaps that is a strength, then not a weakness. James's relief was almost immediate. He had no idea how to act around a being like Queen Janara, but hearing her speak with such calmness about his blunder made him feel a little less like a failure. Maybe this conversation could go somewhere after all. A low murmur spread across the room as the attendants began to set out platters of food and drink. James felt his stomach growl. He had been so nervous earlier that he hadn't had much of an appetite. Now, however, he was beginning to feel more comfortable, and the sight of the exotic dishes set before him was too tempting to ignore. It wasn't just the food, though. It was the opportunity to rebuild his credibility after such a disaster. Queen, noticing his hesitation, gestured to the platter closest to him. "You are welcome to try, Earthling. It is not often that humans are invited to share in our meals." James hesitated for a second, but then nodded. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Took a small portion of the strange fruit in front of him. It looked like a mix between a melon and something that might have come from a distant alien world. He tasted it carefully, surprised to find it sweet and tangy, nothing like anything he had ever eaten before. The burst of flavor almost made him forget about the translator malfunction as he took a few more bites. The conversation slowly turned away from the disastrous greeting. Queen Janara began to ask questions about Earth, about its culture, its history, and its progress. James was grateful for the change in topic. The questions were thoughtful, and the Queen's tone was genuinely curious. "How do you humans perceive the stars?" she asked, her eyes glimmering with interest. "Do you see them as guides, or do you fear the vastness of the void between worlds?" James thought for a moment, surprised by the depth of the question. "We've always looked up at the stars with a sense of wonder, Your Majesty. Some are afraid of the unknown, but most of us are fascinated by it. We've dreamed of reaching them for centuries." Queen Janara nodded thoughtfully. "The same. Curiosity drives us, though we have already journeyed among the stars for eons. And yet, there is always more to discover. Even now, we seek new knowledge, new understanding." James was amazed by her words. It was hard for him to imagine such a powerful, ancient species still seeking to learn and grow. The Volktar were far beyond anything humanity had achieved. They remained humble in their pursuit of knowledge. "It's incredible to think that your species has been traveling the stars for so long," James said. "Humanity has just begun to explore beyond our solar system, but we have so much to learn from you." Queen Janara smiled again, a soft, knowing smile. "It is not the time that defines us, Earthling. It is what we choose to do with the time we have. Your species has made impressive strides in such a short period. Perhaps one day you will achieve the greatness we have, or perhaps you will surpass us." James wasn't sure how to respond to that. The idea of humanity surpassing the Volktar seemed almost impossible. Yet the Queen's words made him believe it was not out of reach. They were so much more advanced, and yet she wasn't dismissive of humanity's potential. It was encouraging. "What would you want from Earth, Your Majesty?" he asked carefully. "What do you hope to achieve from this alliance?" The Queen's gaze turned distant for a moment, as though contemplating something far beyond the current conversation. Then she turned back to James, her eyes intense and full of purpose. "We hope to create a lasting bond between our peoples," she said slowly, "one built on respect and mutual growth. The galaxy is vast, and we cannot navigate it alone. In time, perhaps we can share knowledge, trade, and learn from each other." James nodded, trying to process the weight of her words. This wasn't just about trade or resources. It was about a shared future. The possibility of Earth and the Volktar working together, helping each other in ways neither could have achieved alone, was both humbling and exciting. "But there will be challenges," Queen Janara continued, her voice lowering slightly. "Not all of my people will accept your presence so easily. There will be those who resist, who see you as a threat, or worse, as little more than children. You must be prepared for that." James's heart sank a little. He had known there would be challenges, but hearing the Queen say it so directly made it all the more real. He wasn't sure what resistance would look like, but he knew it would be something humanity would have to face, just as it had faced so many challenges in its own history. "I understand, Your Majesty," James said, his voice steady. "We are ready. We may be young in the grand scheme of things, but we're determined. We want to work with you and the Volktar, and we're willing to prove that we're worthy of that trust." Queen Janara regarded him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she nodded. "We shall see, Earthling, we shall see." As the meeting continued, the tension in the room gradually began to ease. The conversation flowed more freely, the awkwardness of the earlier moments fading into the background. The food, the conversation, and the promise of a shared future between their species made the impossible seem possible. And even though James knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, he left the throne room that day with a renewed sense of purpose and hope for what the future could hold. The next few days were filled with a whirlwind of meetings, briefings, and ceremonies, all designed to make James feel as comfortable as possible in the alien city. Despite the immense pressure on his shoulders, he couldn't shake the feeling that the time spent with Queen Janara had been a turning point, both for him and for Earth. Although the initial awkwardness had passed, James could still feel the sting of the translator mishap. Every now and then, A passing attendant would give him an amused glance, and he would nervously smile back, doing his best to ignore the occasional laughter that followed him. But the Queen had seemed to take it all in stride, and that gave him hope. Perhaps this mission could still be saved after all. He spent much of his time in the palace library, poring over everything he could find about the Volktar. The more he learned, the more he admired them. They were a complex species, with an incredible history of exploration and innovation. But they were also a people deeply rooted in their traditions and wary of outsiders. James was beginning to understand that if Earth was to have any chance at forming an alliance with them, it wouldn't be easy. On the fourth day, he was summoned to meet with Queen Janara again. This time, there was no fancy reception, no large gatherings. It was a private meeting. And James had the distinct feeling that this would be one of the most important conversations he would have during his stay. When he entered the grand hall where the Queen was waiting, she was standing by a large window, gazing out over the city. The view was breathtaking. The sprawling metropolis of the Volktar stretched out beneath a bright alien sky, with spires that seemed to touch the clouds and ships flying gracefully between the towers. It was a scene James had never seen before, and for a brief moment, he forgot the tension of the mission as he took it all in. James, Queen Janara's voice cut through his thoughts, calm and composed as always. I've been thinking about our conversation, and I believe it's time we discuss the next step in our relationship. James straightened, his nerves returning. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment when everything would either fall into place or it would all come crashing down. I'm ready, Your Majesty, he said, his voice steady despite the anxiety building in his chest. He could only hope that the days he had spent learning about the Volktar would help him make the right impression. She turned and walked toward him, her silver robes glimmering in the soft light of the room. I'm glad to hear that, she said, her eyes studying him closely. But before we proceed, there is something I must be clear about. James nodded, eager to hear what she had to say. Of course, Your Majesty. Anything. The path ahead will not be easy, James. There are those among my people who do not trust your kind. There are factions that see humanity's arrival as a threat, one that must be contained, not embraced. James felt a chill run down his spine. He had been prepared for challenges, of course, but hearing it directly from the Queen made it all the more real. I understand, he said quietly. I'm ready for whatever comes next. We'll prove ourselves. We can't let this chance slip away. Queen Janara gave him a small, approving smile. I admire your determination. But the challenge we face is more than just a matter of trust. It's about culture, history, and the way the Volktar view their place in the galaxy. Your people have only just begun to explore the stars. My people have known the vastness of the universe for eons. The difference between us is immense. James nodded slowly. He had known this from the start. The gap between Earth and the Volktar was not just technological, but ideological. I know, he said, but that's exactly why we need to work together. We can learn so much from each other. Humanity might be new to the stars, but we have a lot to offer. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly, as though considering his words carefully. You think your species has something to offer us? She asked, her tone curious, but not dismissive. James didn't hesitate. Yes, I do. Earth has faced challenges that have shaped us: wars, environmental destruction, political struggles. But we've learned from our mistakes. We've built a resilient, innovative species. We might not be as old as the Volktar, but we're adaptable, and we're willing to listen, to grow. Queen Janara didn't speak right away. Instead, she looked at him, her expression unreadable. James wasn't sure if he had made the right impression or if he had said too much. He couldn't tell, but the Queen's silence was beginning to make him uneasy. Finally, after a long pause, she spoke. I have no doubt that humanity is capable of great things, James, but there are many who will not share your optimism. There will be tests, challenges, and trials that you must face, and many of them will come from within our own ranks. If you are to succeed, you must prove your worth not just to me, but to my people. James took a deep breath. He had expected this. He had expected the challenges. And now it was clear that the road ahead would not be a smooth one. But he wasn't ready to give up just yet, not after everything they had worked for. I'm ready for those challenges. Your Majesty, he said with a resolve he hadn't known. He possessed, I understand the difficulty of the situation. But I promise you, I won't back down. I will prove that humanity deserves a place in this galaxy. Queen Janara studied him for a long time, as though weighing his words carefully. Then, at last, she nodded. Double quotes, very well, she said. Then I will put you to the test. A trial of sorts, an opportunity for you to show the Vulctor that you are worthy of their trust. James's heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the chance to prove himself. What kind of trial? He asked, his voice steady. Queen Janara's expression softened, and she motioned for him to follow her to a large table in the center of the room. She pulled a small device from the table, a holographic projector, and placed it on the surface. The device flickered to life, and a 3D map of the galaxy appeared before them, displaying the territories of the Volktar, their allies, and potential enemies. Do you see this? She asked, pointing to the map. This is the realm of the Volktar. In this, she pointed to a distant section of space marked in red, is a region of unrest. There are factions here, groups that challenge our authority, and they have become a growing threat to the stability of the galaxy. James studied the map carefully. The red area was large, covering several systems. He could see that it was surrounded by neutral space, and it seemed to be an area where the Volktar didn't have full control. What do you want me to do? He asked, already suspecting what the challenge would involve. Queen Janara's gaze hardened. I want you to navigate this region. There are dangers, there are pirates, hostile forces, and environmental hazards. You will need to work with one of our best pilots to navigate through it. If you can successfully reach the heart of the region and make contact with the leaders there, then you will prove to the Volktar that humanity is not to be underestimated. James's mind raced. This was no simple diplomatic mission. It was a test of survival, skill, and determination. But he couldn't back down now. I'll do it, he said, his voice firm. I'll prove that humanity can handle whatever challenges the galaxy throws at us. Queen Janara's eyes gleamed. With approval? Then your trial begins tomorrow. Prepare yourself. As James left the throne room, the weight of the task ahead settled heavily on his shoulders. But despite the fear and uncertainty, he felt something else rising within him, determination. He would face the trial head-on, and he would prove that humanity deserved its place in the stars. The sun was setting over the alien city when James stepped out of the palace, the weight of his mission pressing down on him. He had just received the most crucial challenge of his life, to navigate through a dangerous and unstable region of space, and to prove that humanity was capable of handling the unknown. The trial set before him was one that would not only test his skills, but also his resolve. If he failed, the fragile trust between Earth and the Volktar might be shattered forever. He stood on the balcony, gazing out at the sprawling metropolis of the Volktar, trying to steady his racing thoughts. This wasn't just about diplomacy anymore. It was about survival. And survival would depend on his ability to remain calm, make quick decisions, and work with the crew members he was about to meet. He wasn't alone in this trial. He would have the support of the Volktar. But in the end, the success or failure of the mission would fall on his shoulders. The next morning, he was led to a large docking bay. The cold, metallic walls of the bay shimmered as the morning light filtered in through the high windows. In the center of the room stood a sleek, advanced spacecraft. It was nothing like the ships back on Earth, far more elegant, with curves that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The Volktar were clearly far beyond humanity when it came to engineering. Standing near the ship was a tall, imposing figure. The pilot was a woman, her dark skin adorned with intricate patterns that glowed faintly in the light. She stood with her arms crossed, a serious expression on her face as she surveyed the incoming human. Her uniform was tight-fitting, designed for maximum mobility and ease in space. James approached her cautiously, suddenly feeling nervous again. He was about to embark on a mission that could change the fate of humanity, and this pilot, whoever she was going to be key to their survival. "You must be James," the pilot said, her voice low and firm. "I am Talarin. I'll be guiding you through this trial. I hope you're prepared for what's to come." James nodded, swallowing his anxiety. "I'm ready. Whatever it takes." Talarin gave him a brief, almost imperceptible nod. "Good. I suggest you keep up." With that, she turned and strode toward the ship. James followed her, his heart pounding in his chest. This was at the moment when everything would be put to the test. As he climbed aboard the spacecraft, he couldn't help but admire the smooth, advanced technology around him. Everything was automated, from the cockpit to the control panels. The Volktar had clearly mastered space travel to a degree that humanity couldn't even begin to imagine. The door sealed behind them. James took a seat next to Talarin, his hands gripping the armrests tightly. "I'm going to need you to trust me, James," Talarin said, her voice steady but firm. "The region we're heading to is unpredictable. If you panic, if you hesitate, we'll never make it. Do you understand?" James nodded, trying to calm his nerves. "I understand. I won't let you down." Talarin gave him a sharp glance before turning her attention back to the controls. The spacecraft hummed to life, and they began their ascent from the city. As they rose above the clouds, James saw the landscape of the planet shrinking below. The towering spires and vast forests slowly disappeared, replaced by the endless expanse of space. His stomach churned with a mixture of awe and fear as they sped toward the unknown. "I've been through this region before," Talarin said, her eyes focused on the holographic map in front of her. "But it's never the same. The space is filled with anomalies, gravitational distortions, asteroid fields, and hostile forces. Some of it is random, some of it is deliberate. There's no telling what we'll encounter. We have a limited amount of time to get through it." James felt his heart rate spike at the mention of hostile forces, but he kept his mouth shut. Reminding himself that Talarin was the expert here, she had survived this region before, or if he was going to make it through this, he had to follow her lead. The ship entered the deep blackness of space, leaving the comfort of the planet far behind. For a long moment, there was only silence between them, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's engines. James tried to focus on his breathing, steadying himself for whatever was ahead. It wasn't long before the first test arrived. "Brace yourself," Talarin said suddenly, her voice hardening. "Gravitational anomaly ahead. Hold on tight, James." Barely had time to react before the ship was yanked violently off course. The sudden force nearly threw him from his seat, but he gripped the armrests, his knuckles turning white. Outside the window, he saw a swirl of stars bending unnaturally, like a cosmic whirlpool. The ship was pulled toward it, and for a moment, he was sure they were going to be sucked in. But Talarin was calm, her hands working swiftly at the control panel. She guided the ship expertly, using some advanced tech that James couldn't even begin to understand. He could see the concentration in her eyes as she manipulated the ship's trajectory. The stars outside the window spun faster and faster, but with a sudden twist of the controls, they broke free. The gravitational pull faded, and the ship returned to its stable course. James let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His heart was pounding in his chest, and his palms were sweaty, but he forced himself to focus. "Good job," Talarin said, her voice still firm, but with a hint of approval. "You held on? That's half the battle." James nodded, though his mind was racing. That had been far too close for comfort, but they were still alive. They could still make it. The rest of the journey was just as unpredictable. The ship flew through asteroid fields, narrowly avoiding collisions, swerved around unstable debris, dodged energy pulses that seemed to come from nowhere, and even passed through a cluster of shifting space anomalies. Each time, Talarin guided the ship with incredible precision, and James did his best to keep his focus and remain calm. As they neared the red zone on the map, the tension between them grew. The radio crackled to life, and Talarin's eyes narrowed. As a voice echoed through the speakers, "This is the Yelthar outpost. You are trespassing in our territory. Turn back or be destroyed." James's heart skipped a beat. Yelthar. The name sent a chill through him. They were a known group of hostile forces, feared throughout the galaxy for their ruthlessness. These were the very factions Queen Janara had warned him about. This was the test he had been waiting for. Talarin didn't flinch. She merely keyed in a response. "We're not here to fight. We have a message from Queen Janara. Stand down and let us pass." The Yelthar voice came again, colder this time. "You think the Queen's name will save you? Prepare to defend yourselves?" The ship jolted as laser fire erupted from the Yelthar outpost. The impact rattled through the hull, and James braced himself for impact. But Talarin was already in action, expertly maneuvering the ship through evasive rolls and sharp turns. The lasers missed them by mere inches, and the space around them seemed to explode with energy bursts. James could feel the tension in the air as the enemy ships closed in. This was the moment that would define everything. He couldn't let fear take over. He couldn't hesitate. "Do you trust me?" Talarin asked, her voice almost calm despite the chaos. "Of course," James said, without missing a beat. "What do you need me to do?" Talarin glanced at him quickly, her eyes sharp. "I need you to fire the countermeasures. The launch controls are right in front of you. We can't outrun them, but we can blind them long enough to make our escape." James didn't hesitate, quickly grabbed the controls, his fingers trembling. Slightly as he activated the countermeasure systems, missiles and energy pulses launched from the ship, creating a blinding flash that filled the space around them. The Yelthar ships hesitated, momentarily blinded by the countermeasures. It was just enough time for Talarin to engage the ship's hyperdrive. With a sudden lurch, they shot forward. The stars stretched into long lines as they entered faster than light travel. "We're clear," Talarin said, her voice still. Steady, though there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Pride. Whatever it was, James could see that they had made it through Dash together, as the ship cruised toward their destination. James leaned back in his seat, his body still shaking from the adrenaline. "We did it," he said, his voice hoarse. Talarin gave him a short, approving nod. "You did your part. But we're not done yet." James swallowed hard. He had proven himself in this first test, but he knew the true challenge had yet to come. Race that has been systematically wiping out human colonies across the galaxy. For years, humanity has tried to fight back using conventional tactics, but the Zerakon's overwhelming military power seems insurmountable. Just when hope is dwindling, an unprecedented communication arrives. The Queen of the Zerakon Empire, Queen Zelenara, extends an offer that shocks humanity to its core. "If you want peace, you must marry me." The message is broadcast across the entire galaxy, and humanity is thrown into disarray. Is it a trap? A power play? Or something entirely unexpected? Captain Jacques Corbin, a decorated officer of the United Earth Fleet, is tasked with leading a diplomatic mission to understand this bizarre proposal. As tensions rise, human leaders debate whether to accept the offer or reject it as a ridiculous stunt. But what nobody knows is that the Queen's proposal is part of a deeper game, one that could either save humanity or destroy it entirely. Part 2. The negotiations. Captain Corbin and his team, including Earth's most skilled diplomats and strategists, arrive at the Zerakon capital to meet Queen Zelenara face to face. The Queen, a towering figure of alien majesty with glowing green eyes and intricate armor, makes it clear that this is no joke. She reveals that her empire is in decline, with a serious faction of rebel alien races threatening to overthrow her. In a shocking twist, she explains that her proposal is not political or personal, it's a matter of survival for her species. In Zerakon culture, peace between two civilizations is often cemented through a marriage alliance, sacred bond that ensures mutual protection and cooperation. As absurd as it sounds to humans, this is their version of diplomacy. Queen Zelenara admits she has been watching humanity for decades and is impressed by their resilience, creativity, and sheer will to survive, traits the Zerakons had long since lost. While Captain Corbin is skeptical, he also realizes that this might be the only chance to save billions of lives. But there's a catch. The marriage is not just symbolic. The Queen demands a partnership in every sense, with a promise to create a new era of unity or risk the annihilation of Earth. Part 3. the trial of trust, back on Earth. Leaders and citizens alike are divided over the Queen's marriage proposal. Some see it as a golden opportunity for peace, while others believe it is a ploy to conquer humanity from within. Captain Corbin and the diplomatic team try to understand more about the Zerrikon Empire's culture and the Queen's true intentions. During their stay, the team is invited to witness Zerrakan ceremonies and traditions, where they are astounded by the sheer complexity and wisdom of the alien race. Corbin finds himself unexpectedly drawn to Queen Zelenara's calm demeanor and regal intelligence. The Queen, in turn, seems to admire humanity's adaptability and independence. However, tensions are high as rival factions within the Zerrikon Empire grow suspicious of the human visitors, and assassination attempts on the diplomats begin. Captain Corbin must navigate a dangerous political landscape where trust is scarce, and every move could lead to war or peace. The situation escalates as the Zerrikon rebels launch an attack on the human delegation, forcing Corbin to make an unlikely alliance with the Queen to ensure their survival. Part 4. The Forbidden Union. With Earth on the brink of war and the Zerrikon Empire in chaos, Captain Corbin faces a gut-wrenching decision. The Human Council demands a return to Earth, refusing to accept a marriage alliance with the alien Queen, while the rebels within the Zerrikon Empire continue to push for war. Amidst this, Queen Zelenara's true intentions are slowly revealed. She wants a union not just for political power, but for the restoration of her people's lost values of unity, honor, and peace. As the Queen and Captain Corbin spend more time together, the lines between duty and personal feelings begin to blur. Corbin struggles with his growing admiration and feelings for Zelenara, even though such an alliance would mean profound changes in both cultures. He must decide whether to accept his role as her consort, and in essence the key to peace between two civilizations, or reject her offer, leading to untold war and destruction. In a dramatic and emotional confrontation, Corbin is forced to accept the reality of their situation. The marriage proposal is not just about saving Earth, it's about restoring balance to the galaxy itself, and perhaps finding common ground between two species that could change the course of history forever. Part 5. A. New Dawn. The wedding ceremony is unlike anything humanity has ever seen, blending human and Zerrikon traditions in an epic fusion of cultures. As Captain Corbin and Queen Zelenara unite, the galaxy watches in awe, but the ceremony is interrupted by the rebel faction, who launches a loud assault on the Zerrikon capital in a last-ditch effort to overthrow the monarchy and destroy the peace process. Now bound by a sacred union, Corbin and Zelenara must fight side by side, leading both their people into a battle for survival. With the combined forces of humanity and the Zerrikons, they fight back the rebels in a thrilling final battle. Amid the chaos, Corbin learns the true cost of his decision, not only as a leader, but as a symbol of unity between two vastly different worlds. In the end, the rebels are defeated, and peace is secured, but at a cost. Corbin and Zelenara's marriage transforms the political landscape of the galaxy. And while not all conflicts are resolved, a new era begins. The final scene shows Captain Corbin looking out over a new, unified galaxy, contemplating the future of humanity's place in this vastly different world and the unpredictable consequences of love and peace.